I lost 40 pounds on a plant-based diet after struggling with my weight for nearly a decade. I'm going to share with you 5 books that completely changed my mindset around habits and behavioral change that were transformative to me losing the weight and now keeping it off for the past 6 years. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I moved from New Zealand to America, so I didn't bring all my books, but imagine I'm holding it right here. My copy was so beaten up, I just chose to leave it behind. But I've read this book so many times. It was the first book I read that completely changed my mentality from a victim to the hero of my own story. 10 years ago, there was 2 impactful events that completely altered the course of my life. The first one was that within about 5 months of getting married, my husband was diagnosed with a progressive condition called multiple sclerosis, which meant that the course of our lives was changed forever in that diagnosis. The second thing was that about a month later, I was diagnosed with a fetus who has turned out to be the biggest blessing in my life, my daughter Riley. But at the time, I wasn't expecting either of these 2 things, and my life crumbled. I went from feeling optimistic about my life to feeling like I had no control, and that life or God or the world was out to get me. And there were a lot of things that happened to me that were out of my control. I battled a lot of depression at this time, which lasted for a couple of years. But the thing that really screwed me over was my response to situations that were difficult and were devastating, but I chose to see myself as a victim from them. And I didn't know any better at the time. And what that practically meant was I never took ownership of my response to those things that were happening. Even after Riley was born, when things would be difficult, I would say things like, I never chose this. That's not fair. Why is this happening to me? Why is it easier for everyone else? I remember scrolling on Instagram and seeing couples walk on the beach, realizing that I was not actually ever going to be able to do that again with Nick, and feeling like my life was so unfair that it wasn't even worth living. In 2017, I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it blew my little baby mind. I learned a concept that has allowed me to lose the 40 pounds and keep them off, build a business, grow a YouTube channel to over 100,000 subscribers, run multiple half marathons and hit a pull-up PB, all because of understanding the gap between stimuli and response. This is the first habit in the 7 Habits book. Be proactive. That between stimuli, anything that is happening to you, and what you do next, your response, you have the ability to choose. And this is where your true freedom lies. Stephen Covey calls this your responsibility, your ability to respond. And it is your responsibility in that gap to choose what you will do next. And you can't choose all the stimuli, be that your hormones, your height, childhood trauma that makes you overeat, or any other thing that maybe makes it harder to lose weight. But between that stimuli and your response, which is what you do about it, you have complete freedom and choice, and nobody can take that away from you. And the ownership of the outcomes that you want in your life is because of the choice that you make in that gap, your response. I completely shifted the way that I thought about the bad things that had happened to me and all the things that were outside of my control, and instead shifted to what I could do next. And candidly, the only reason that you are watching this video right now is because of me understanding that concept and then applying it. I realized that no matter the bad things that happen to me or the things outside of my control that might make my life harder, I can always choose an empowered response. I can have freedom inside of pain and suffering and difficulty because of my response ability. So I started to put that into practice. Here we are. How not to diet. Michael Greger compiles over 40,000 studies. I'm pretty sure it's that. Don't quote me on that exact number. But a buttload of studies on the overwhelming evidence for a low calorie density, high fiber, whole foods, plant-based diet. And the principles in this book are how I eat today to maintain my weight loss, and they're how I lost the 40 pounds to begin with. There are a ton of books about a plant-based diet and what different things to do in order to lose weight. I love How Not to Diet because of the overwhelming conviction that it gave me that this is the best diet for fat loss. How Not to Diet shows how you can eat a lot of whole foods, fill up your stomach, and still eat less calories, which is called calorie density. There's this visual of how different foods fill up your stomach. There's this massive contrast between 16 stomachfuls of broccoli versus a quarter stomachful of butter for 2,000 calories. How Not to Diet convinced me of the importance of fiber when it comes to losing weight to keep you fuller for longer. And one of my favorite concepts from the book is the ileal brake. The ileal sits just above your colon at the bottom of your intestines. But the fascinating thing about it is when undigested calories are detected in the ileal, which really only happens from very high fiber foods like lentils or beans, because the fiber slows the absorption of calories by like literally blocking it from your intestinal wall as it travels down, you get this magical effect that suppresses hunger, aka the ileal brake. And the cool part is this happens 10, 11 hours after you actually eat that meal. There are so many helpful takeaways. And for me, most importantly, having the conviction that I was on the right track has made it very easy for me to stick to it. Where this is a little bit more difficult is it is not a how-to guide, and there isn't a clear outline as to what behaviors are going to be most impactful for weight loss. The book ends with 21 things to do every day, which is a lot, and they're not all of equal importance in terms of impact, but in terms of books about a plant-based diet, specifically for weight loss, this is the best one there is. Atomic Habits. The best book on behavioral change. Atomic Habits looks at how we form ingrained behaviors. Things like putting our seatbelt on, brushing our teeth, what foods we eat, how to make it easier to create new positive behaviors, and possible to break the ones we thought we never could. Atomic Habits shows the 4-step sequence that occurs when we build habits, our ingrained behaviors, starting with a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. The cool part about understanding how our brains form habits with this sequence, and what James Clear outlines in the book, is that all we need to do to break bad habits is to pattern interrupt somewhere along those 4 stages if we want to break a bad habit. But if we want to form a new good habit, just make it easier, more obvious, more satisfying, and more rewarding to complete those 4 stages of whatever good habit we're trying to form. The highest impact tool from Atomic Habits is the commitment device. And anytime I want to get really serious about guaranteeing a result for myself, I use this tool. A commitment device is a decision that you make right now that forces you to make the decisions you want to later on when it gets difficult. And this is illustrated in the story of Ulysses from Greek mythology. Ulysses is trying to bring his entire fleet home from war, and they're about to go through this passage of ocean where the sirens, beautiful mermaid singing goddess girls, are going to lure them into the rocks with their song. So before they get to the point where the sirens are singing to them, Ulysses has his men put wax in their ears, and he ties himself to the mast so that when he goes through that passage and the siren song is calling to him, he stays on track. And a commitment device works exactly like this. I've used this by signing up for a half marathon, so I'm forced to train and run. I've used this by signing up for PT, so I'm forced to go to my PT session, which, by the way, I will be doing today. And I also ran today because I signed up for a half marathon. I have a theory when it comes to behavioral change that is yet to be proven wrong. And that is that there is some commitment device so strong and so painful for you to not follow through on it that you could get yourself to do anything. 2 years ago, I really wanted to grow on YouTube, and every single week I would tell myself, I'm gonna get serious, I'm gonna put out YouTube videos, but I never was consistent with it. No matter what I tried, I had accountability, I would put it in my calendar, but it wasn't until I realized I needed a very strong commitment device, and I set up a system for myself using the app Stick that if I did not release a YouTube video every single week on a Friday before 12 midnight, that I would automatically pay $100 to a charity I didn't like. And I set that up for a year. Guess what? I didn't miss a single video. And I grew my channel by about 40 to 50,000 subscribers over the course of that year, plus learned so much through that commitment device. Drop me a comment of where you've used a commitment device in your own life, because there will be many. It is incredibly effective. And this book talks about how to do it. The subtle art of not giving a The way to be happier is not to not have problems. It's to have good problems, take responsibility and ownership for the outcomes of your life, and choose the problems that you want. So it's not a bad thing that weight loss is difficult and maybe your metabolism is slower than her, or you're 60 and going through menopause. It's actually the process of problem solving that gives the most satisfaction and trust in yourself when it comes to losing weight, getting fit, or any kind of long-term behavioral change that has to have massive lifestyle shifts. There are many things I love about this book, and I'm actually listening to it again for the 3rd time. But one of the key things Mark Manson describes is how easy it is to be in love with the destination or the idea of the destination as opposed to the climb. He shares a story of dreaming to be a famous rock star. thinking about being on stage, idolized by millions of people. And he had this dream slash fantasy for years, decades in fact. But what he came to realize, and what eventually led him to let go of that dream, was that he didn't actually like the process. The gigs, lugging the equipment around, the networking, the hours of practice. He was in love with the idea, but not the process. And when it comes to losing weight, a lot of people are the same. They like the idea of being lean, they like the idea of being fit, but they don't actually enjoy the process. And don't get me wrong, the process itself is difficult. But remember, solvable problems are not actually negative. They're positive when it comes to our fulfillment. The key here is to build what you are doing into something that can be enjoyable, or to accept that the problems of getting lean and eating healthier are the destination. It's what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. So do whatever it takes to romanticize, fall in love with the process, and enjoy the process, because you do not get to the goal unless you do that. And there are lots of ways that you can do this as well. Going hungry is not one of them. Own the problems that you want to solve. And if changing the way that you shop, eating more vegetables, learning to cook differently, learning to be the odd one out when you go out to eat because you say no, bringing food with you, getting up earlier. If these are not problems that you want to own and solve, then let go and release yourself from the outcome, the dream of being lean or having the success, because you want the destination, not the climb. And that's also okay. Nobody is forcing you to change your behavior. So if you don't want the process, stop lying to yourself and fantasizing about the destination. The Potato Reset. This book by Janine Alder is extremely actionable and extremely simple. And it's the first book that I read about how to lose weight. This book taught me that potatoes were not going to make me fat and instead would keep me full and satisfied to stop me binging. It taught me to eat a load of vegetables and how to cook with a lot of vegetables so that I could eat big portions of food and reduce my cravings. And it taught me to love and build my meals around potatoes. I read The Potato Reset before any other book about fat loss, and I'm really grateful that I had something so simple and actionable in the beginning, because it got me started and trusting the process for myself. In terms of what to do to lose weight, the more complexity or confusion you can avoid, the better, because the only thing that actually changes is taking action. I did the Potato Reset for a month, really did not trust the process when I first started, but didn't go hungry in that month, ended up losing 8 pounds, which is the fastest I've ever lost weight, and have taken those core principles, which I later found out are consistent with how not to diet, calorie density, satiety, and really just all of the research around how to reduce calories without losing your mind. But I learned that from actually implementing first, seeing it work for me, and I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity. And maybe you're wondering why I haven't talked about more actionable weight loss books or mentioned more books that are written by plant-based authors. And the reason for this is A, I'm going to mention the books that I've actually read and have had an impact on me. And B, I don't think that weight loss is very complicated. Eat less calories by using calorie density. And if you want an exact framework of how I do this, then I outlined it fully for you, because I think this information should be free inside of my mini course, which even has a 7-day Kickstarter challenge that is going to get you losing quickly and also learning how that works. Aside from what to do when it comes to weight loss, the most important thing is that you understand and implement behavioral change and take radical ownership for the choices in your life. That is how to transform your life, not just when it comes to weight loss, but in every single area, which is why I've chosen the books that I have for this. Let me know in the comments which of these books you've read, but also what books have been most impactful for your journey, and let's share all the knowledge around. Don't forget to go take action, and I'll see you in another video.